Everything you know about her is wrong. She wasn't Egyptian. She probably wasn't a legendary beauty. The ancient sources say so themselves. And she did not survive by seduction. She survived because she was, quite possibly, the most dangerous mind Rome ever faced. In an age when the Roman machine was swallowing every kingdom on the map, one by one, without exception, she kept hers alive for 20 years. Not with armies. Egypt's armies were nothing next to Rome's. She did it by turning the two most powerful men on earth into partners of her kingdom, one after the other. Hollywood remembers a seductress. History records a strategist. And the difference between those two stories is the entire lesson. This is the dark psychology of Cleopatra. Let's begin by demolishing the myth, because the truth is far more interesting. First, Cleopatra was not ethnically Egyptian. She was Greek, Macedonian Greek, the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals who had seized Egypt 3 centuries earlier. Her family was a foreign occupation dressed as a monarchy, and, incidentally, one of the most murderous families in history, where siblings routinely destroyed each other for the throne. That was the school she grew up in. Second, the beauty. Here is what the ancient historian Plutarch, writing closest to living memory of her, actually says. Her beauty, he tells us, was not in itself remarkable. Not the kind that stuns at first glance. Look at the coin she herself minted. A strong profile, a prominent nose, the face of a ruler, not a fantasy. But then Plutarch tells us what she actually had. Her presence, he says, was irresistible. Her conversation had a charm that hooked into people. And her voice, he describes it like a many-stringed instrument, which she played masterfully, shifting effortlessly from language to language. Because that was the real weapon, the mind. She was ferociously educated, trained in rhetoric, philosophy, mathematics, medicine. She is said to have spoken as many as 9 languages, negotiating with ambassadors from half the world without an interpreter. Here is the first principle, and it overturns everything the myth teaches. Magnetism is not a face. It is a mind that makes the other person feel fascinating, understood, and slightly outmatched. People didn't fall under Cleopatra's spell when they looked at her. They fell when she started talking. And one of those 9 languages reveals her political genius better than any battle. For 300 years, her Greek dynasty had ruled Egypt without bothering to learn Egyptian. 10 generations of kings, governing millions of people through interpreters, foreign masters, forever separate from their own subjects. Cleopatra was the first ruler of her entire line to learn the language of Egypt. Think about what that signals. To the priests, to the farmers along the Nile, to the ancient temples. Here, finally, was a ruler who spoke to them in their own tongue. And she went further. She wrapped herself in Egypt's own sacred story, presenting herself as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis, the divine mother, the protector. She appeared at temple ceremonies. She honored the old rites. She made a foreign dynasty feel, at last, Egyptian. Was it sincere devotion? Was it theater? It was power, and it worked. While her ancestors had ruled Egypt like landlords, Cleopatra ruled it like a legitimate pharaoh, with the loyalty of the people and the priesthood behind her. This is the second principle. Legitimacy is not inherited, it is performed. A ruler that people see as their own is 10 times harder to overthrow. She didn't just hold the throne. She rewrote the story of who was sitting on it. But before the legend, there was a young woman losing a death match. Cleopatra inherited the throne at 18, forced by custom to share it with her 10-year-old brother. In the snake pit of Ptolemaic politics, that meant war was only a matter of time. The brothers' advisors moved first. By 21, Cleopatra had been outmaneuvered, stripped of power, and driven out of Alexandria into exile, scraping together mercenaries in the desert while her enemies held the capital, the treasury, and the crown. By every reasonable measure, her story was over. Deposed queens did not come back. In her family, they simply died. And then, in the year 48 BC, fortune threw the dice. The Roman Civil War came crashing into Egypt, and its victor, the most powerful man in the world, sailed into Alexandria. Julius Caesar took up residence in the royal palace and summoned the feuding siblings to settle their dispute. Here was the situation. Her brother's faction controlled the city and the palace approaches. If Cleopatra tried to enter openly, she would likely be killed before ever reaching Caesar. But whoever got to Caesar first, whoever won him, would win Egypt. What she did next became one of the most famous moves in the history of power. She had herself smuggled into the palace, rolled inside bedding, legend says a carpet, carried past her enemy's guards on the shoulders of a single loyal servant, and delivered, like a gift, directly into Caesar's private quarters. Imagine the moment from Caesar's side. The most powerful man alive, veteran of every court in the Mediterranean, master of ceremony and manipulation, and suddenly the bundle on the floor unrolls, and out steps the exiled Queen of Egypt, composed, smiling, and already speaking. In one move, she had told him everything that mattered, without a single word of pleading. That she was daring beyond any ruler he had met. That she was clever enough to defeat a palace full of enemies with a rolled-up carpet. That she trusted him enough to place her life, literally, in his hands. And that she was, unmistakably, more interesting than anyone else in Egypt. Plutarch says Caesar was captivated first by exactly that, the boldness of it. By morning, the master of Rome was her ally. Within months, her enemies were destroyed, her brother drowned fleeing a battle, and Cleopatra sat again on the throne of Egypt, this time with Rome's legions behind her. This is the third principle, and burn it into memory. Whoever controls the stage controls the decision. Cleopatra understood that how you enter determines how you are judged before you speak. A begging exile at the gate is a problem to be managed. A queen who materializes from a carpet in your bedroom is a force to be reckoned with. Same woman. Different staging. Different history. History calls what followed a love affair. Look closer, and you see a treaty. Understand Cleopatra's cold, permanent problem, Rome. The Roman Republic was devouring the entire Mediterranean. Carthage, Greece, Syria, kingdom after kingdom reduced to provinces. Egypt was the richest prize left, and everyone in Rome knew it. No army she could build would ever stop them. So Cleopatra reasoned her way to the only strategy that could work. If Rome could not be resisted, it had to be entered, through its most powerful man. Make Caesar not Egypt's conqueror, but Egypt's partner. Make her survival profitable to him, her treasury funding his ambitions, her grain feeding his city, her throne owing its existence to his support. And it worked. Egypt kept its independence, the only great kingdom that did, precisely because its queen had made herself, and her country, part of the winner's own interests. She bore Caesar a son. She came to Rome itself and lived there as his guest, the living symbol of the alliance. Then, in a single afternoon in March of 44 BC, the entire structure collapsed. Daggers in the Senate. Caesar dead on the floor. And every piece of Cleopatra's strategy, her protector, her alliance, her son's future, erased in minutes. A lesser player would have been finished. Cleopatra sailed home, secured her throne, and studded the new board. Rome was again at war with itself. And sooner or later, it would produce a new strongest man. His name was Mark Antony. And when he summoned the Queen of Egypt to answer charges before him at Tarsus, she prepared the second masterpiece of staging in her career. Antony expected a nervous client queen, arriving to apologize and negotiate. What arrived instead has echoed for 2,000 years. Up the river to Tarsus came a barge with a gilded stern, purple sails, and silver oars that beat the water in rhythm to flutes and lyres. Clouds of incense drifted from the deck to the crowded shores. And at the center, dressed as Venus, the goddess of love herself, reclined Cleopatra, attended like a vision from mythology. Word raced through the city, and the crowds abandoned everything to line the riverbanks. Antony, the great general, was left sitting on his tribunal in an emptying square, while the entire population flocked to stare at the queen. The summoned had upstaged the summoner. Then the final touch. Antony sent word inviting her to dine with him. She declined, and invited him instead. And he came. The man who had ordered her to appear before his judgment seat ended the evening as a guest on a ship, dazzled, surrounded by her luxury, on her stage, by her rules. She had answered the summons without obeying it. She arrived as the accused, and received him as a goddess receives a mortal. This is the fourth principle. Spectacle is not vanity, it is statecraft. Every empire understands it. The parades, the palaces, the carefully engineered awe. Cleopatra grasped that the human mind decides who holds power based on what it sees, and so she gave Antony's army, Antony's officers, and Antony himself a vision they could never unsee. The negotiation was over before dinner was served. What followed was the boldest phase of her game. With Antony, ruler of Rome's entire eastern half, Cleopatra built not just an alliance but a vision, a joint Mediterranean power, Roman force married to Egyptian wealth, with their children proclaimed heirs to kingdoms. For a moment, it was almost real. And then it collided with the one weapon Cleopatra could not outstage: a rival storyteller. In Rome, Antony's rival Octavian, Caesar's cold, brilliant heir, was fighting with narratives, and he chose his target with surgical precision. Not Antony. Her. Roman propaganda transformed Cleopatra into the perfect enemy, the foreign queen, the Eastern sorceress who had bewitched a good Roman general, the serpent who dreamed of ruling Rome itself. When war came, Octavian declared it, with deliberate symbolism, not against Antony, but against Cleopatra. It was masterful. Romans wary of another civil war could now march against a foreign menace instead. She had spent a lifetime controlling her own story. Octavian simply wrote a louder one and gave it to all of Italy. In 31 BC, at the Sea Battle of Actium, the gamble broke. The fleet was shattered, the cause collapsed. Within a year, Octavian's legions were at the gates of Alexandria, Antony was dead by his own hand, and Cleopatra was a prisoner in her own palace. And now, the final move, because even at the absolute end, Cleopatra understood something her captor wanted desperately to hide. Octavian didn't want her dead. He wanted her displayed. The crowning glory of a Roman triumph was the parade of the conquered enemy, and Cleopatra in chains, dragged through the streets of Rome before a howling crowd, would be the greatest spectacle of his life. Her humiliation was to be the final proof of his victory. She knew it, and she refused to play the part. Guarded, watched, stripped of weapons, she still outmaneuvered him one last time. The famous story tells of a basket of figs carried past the guards, and the cobra hidden beneath them, the sacred serpent of Egyptian royalty. Whether it was truly the snake, or a hidden poison, the historians still debate. What is certain is the result. When Octavian's men burst in, they found the Queen of Egypt dead, dressed in her full royal regalia, laid upon a golden couch, crowned as pharaoh. She had staged even her own death. Not as a defeated captive, but as a queen, exiting on her own terms, in costume, on her stage. Octavian's triumphal parade would march without its prize. The conqueror of Egypt had been denied his final scene by the woman who never, once in her life, let anyone else direct her. This is the fifth principle, and it is the darkest and the most defiant. Even in total defeat, the last scene can still be yours. They can take your kingdom, your allies, your future, but the one who writes the ending owns the story. And 2,000 years later, ask yourself whose name shines brighter, the victor's or hers. So what does Cleopatra really teach us? That the myth about her is itself the final lesson. The world reduced the most educated ruler of her age, the strategist who held off Rome for 20 years, to a pretty face and a love story. Because a seductress is a comfortable explanation, and a superior mind is a threatening one. Her real playbook was pure psychology. Magnetism built on intellect, not appearance. Legitimacy performed in the people's own language and their own gods. The stage controlled at every entrance, from a rolled carpet to a golden barge. Survival engineered by binding her fate to the interests of the powerful. And when everything fell, the final scene seized from her enemy's hands. But her defeat teaches, too, she was ultimately beaten not by armies, but by a better propagandist. The mistress of her own story lost to the man who wrote her story for her. In the game of power, the deadliest enemy is not the one with more soldiers, it is the one who controls what the world believes about you. If this changed the way you see power, subscribe. Because here, we don't study history to escape the past. We study it to understand the games being played around you, right now. And to see the same war over story and legitimacy fought a world away, watch our video on Wu Zetian, the concubine who became emperor. Or return to where Cleopatra's story began, with Julius Caesar.